we've got Associate Professor Kelly Linden here from Charles Sturt, and she's going to be talking about Universal Design for Learning, a pilot study on improving student success rates. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Thank you very much. So I'm wearing a tan and black striped top, have medium length black brown hair, it's about to be colored tie, and all classes. I'd like to begin with a short introduction of the country. So I'd like to acknowledge the gradually number one Kandahar and Purified Groups of Australia, who are the traditional owners and custodians of the lands on which Charles Sturt's campuses are located. Pay respect to the elders of the last and present. And I did want to give a little bit of context about Charles Sturt University. Not everybody's heard of us. We are Australia's largest regional university with 6 main campuses located throughout regional New South Wales. And I'm located on the southernmost campus of Linden. It's very, very cold here to ship ice to travel to work. Now, to speak Charles Sturtian, we refer to whether students enrolled in an 8-week unit, such as Accounting 100, report that as subject. And students who are enrolled in a number of subjects to make up their course, such as the Bachelor of Accounting. And that terminology will come a little bit through this presentation. Now, when we look at our undergraduate students, they're not necessarily...
apologies, Kelly, it's Darren. I'm just going to interrupt. Are you able to talk a little bit closer to the microphone, or do you have another microphone? There's a lot of room echo coming through and it's difficult to hear you.
Oh, no.
Or a headset?
My headset just broke yesterday and I wasn't able to get another one.
That's right. Maybe just the volume you're speaking now and speaking directly towards maybe the laptop microphone is a little bit better, and we'll see how that goes.
I'm so sorry. That was terrible timing. I'll speak louder. Thank you. And do call me up if you have an issue. Thank you. So of our undergraduate students, 56% are from regional, rural and remote areas. 24% of our students are from low socioeconomic backgrounds. 7% of students living with disability and 4% of students identify as First Nations. But many of our students actually belong to many equity groups, and it's just as common for a student to belong to 3 as none. Now, each year, approximately 24,000 students are enrolled online, and 10,500 students can study on campus. So most of our students are studying online, and also most of them are studying part-time, about 70% of students studying part-time. Now, I've been at Charles Sturt for 17 years, and for the first 9 years, I taught large service-taught physiology subjects. And then the last 9 years, I've been in learning and teaching leadership roles with a focus on student success and student retention. Now, the work I'm about to share is all based on the literature, and we really based it on 3 frameworks. Now, our transition pedagogy framework acknowledges students' transition to university from diverse backgrounds with varied preparedness for studying at university. It puts the onus on the university to provide a seamless experience and specifies that initiatives should be curriculum-centred, promote diversity, and include a whole-of-institution approach. We also know that incorporating universal design for learning into subject development benefits all students. UDL in higher education aims to provide flexible learning environments where students can access and engage with resources and assessments in various ways, accommodating their diverse needs and removing unnecessary barriers for learning. We also incorporated a pedagogy of kindness, meeting students where they're at, carefully considering the tone and timing of student communications and support. Now, an institutional approach is important for consistent student experience, and we should consider what works for intentional and inclusive curriculum design. Well-designed curriculum provides a foundation for students' wellbeing and belonging. Therefore, content needs to be explicitly scaffolded, inclusive, and relevant. Now, at Charles Sturt, we know that many of our students are coming to university from non-traditional backgrounds and impacted by structural inequality. We do have some really great support systems in place throughout the student life cycle, but often students need to take their first step. They essentially need to go and find another crate to stand on. But what if we could intentionally design our first year subjects so that no students are disadvantaged? The aim of this initiative was to improve course level student success by developing and implementing a consistent set of guidelines in subject development to inform intentional and inclusive design. So we approached this project with the lens of how can we remove institutional barriers to help enhance student success. And in 2023 and 2024, I was lucky enough to lead this strategic project through the Deputy Vice Chancellor Academics Office. And we worked across 17 subjects with an average number of 304 enrolled students across 3 courses, the Bachelors of Nursing, Business and Education. Now, all subjects had a low pass rate of only 67% on average. And a team of academic, professional and leadership staff worked together on subject development with a course level lens. We also had ethics approval for the project. Now, we started with a thorough subject analysis. We looked at students' enrolment patterns. We do obviously provide enrolment patterns for students, but we also know that they don't always take our advice. And so looking carefully at the enrolment patterns was quite eye-opening of what subject students were actually taking together, particularly having such a high proportion of students studying part-time. We looked at student demographics across the 3 courses and certainly noticed some differences that we built into our subject development, such as in the Bachelor of Business, we had a really high proportion of students in very remote areas. So acknowledging that when developing online content for the LMS, knowing that not all students will have a stable internet connection. We looked at subject and quilt evaluations, including the open text responses from previous years, and really learned a lot from that. And we looked at assessment submission data, and it was interesting across all 3 courses. Very few students were failing and submitting all assessment items. Most students who were failing were actually only submitting 1 or maybe no assessments, or 1 or 2 assessments, and essentially failing through non-submission. We also met with a large number of students. We met with 50 students across the 3 courses. For on-campus students, we held a pizza lunch, or a number of pizza lunches, sorry. And for the online students, we ran some group Zoom sessions, and we thanked students with a $20 Woolworths voucher for their participation. And we really just had a very open-ended, non-structured interview of what did they like and what could be improved across their first year. And I'll have some of those findings from meeting with the students. Now, many of our students work a lot. Almost all of the on-campus students we spoke with work more than 20 hours a week, and a number work close to full-time, and they need to survive. Most of the online students we spoke with were working full-time or near full-time and have complicated commitments, including caring responsibilities, such as young families, and really required flexibility with their studies. Now, having not taught for the last 9 years, this has dramatically changed. I'm sure many people in the room will be aware of that. The importance of consistency and clarity kept coming through. Students had trouble, so finding information can be difficult and overwhelming for commencing students. And students can have difficulty finding lecture notes, readings, and assessment instructions if they're not placed in a sensible and consistent location. One student spoke about, she said, it took almost 2 hours to find her lecture notes. It was her first semester of study, and someone had to actually tell her that they were saved as tutorial notes, and she didn't know the words in that subject could be used interchangeably. So even just that consistent language throughout was so important. Real world examples, students really value classes where academics are able to share real world examples of an industry experience, making strong connections between what they were learning in the subject and their application in the real profession. Catching up kept coming up as being really important. Students who missed a lecture, a workshop or a tutorial found it difficult to catch up if recordings were not made available. Having those recordings is very important. And the importance of feedback. 2 students described an example where feedback provided was so helpful for an assignment that they did considerably better on a following assessment item. That really should be the norm, not the exception. But they were pretty chuffed that that happened. Now, without prompting, there were 2 points that came up regularly of what students really loved. And these, in 2023, our university introduced a no questions asked automatic 7-day extension that students can take for 1 assessment item for each subject, and they love it. So without prompting, students in all 4 sessions that we ran reported how much they liked automatic 7-day extension. We also run it since 2021. We've run an embedded tutor program where students can meet one-on-one with an embedded tutor in the 2 weeks leading up to an assessment item to get feedback from the discipline-specific tutor, and students gave some really great feedback on that. Now, after all of this analysis, we started thinking what should be available in a first-year subject, and we certainly saw that there was a lack of consistency in the experience students received across their enrolment. And so we developed a set of principles, and we tested these principles and edited them. We've gone through a number of governance committees now, and we've also created exemplars and templates to work alongside them. Now, these principles are not aspirational. There's so much more that we could do. So we've called it the minimum expectations, and it's essentially what should be available in a first-year subject. What should students expect for a certain level of consistency across their enrolment? And we divided the minimum expectations into 3 areas: scaffolding with content, delivery, and assessment for learning. Now, in the interest of time, I'm not going to have time to go through all of them, so I'm just going to go through, describe one of each on each screen. So for scaffolding and content, one thing that, it came through the student interviews how important consistent sequencing of learning content and activities are. So throughout the subject each week, we make sure it's clear for students what to expect in each topic. And we also make sure that we're delivering the content through a variety of ways. So for example, there might be videos, a podcast, reading, learning activity, reflection, but they're set out in exactly the same order for each week. Regarding delivery, all recordings and resources associated with synchronous learning sessions are provided to students, including slides, in a timely manner to support learning and revision. They need to be accessible and available the following business day. And online classes need to be delivered with the academic, with the camera on, professional background and quality microphones. On-campus recordings also need to be of a reasonable quality. We really also, in that point, built in the importance of being kind and welcoming to students. If students not able to attend, please don't send threatening emails that you'll cancel the class if more people don't attend. Remind students that they're welcome. Regarding assessment, feedback must be provided for all assessment tasks, including early assessment items to support students to build capacity for enhanced learning, and a number is not feedback. So we've really worked with a lot of academics here around providing feedback for students. Now, what we found with these subjects that we redeveloped was with a 27% increase in the pass rate or the success rate the year after the subject was redeveloped. So across the subjects we redeveloped, that accounted for approximately 1,032 additional passing grades of the just over 5,000 students across enrolled. And we then had a closer look at the grade distribution, and we found that really quite interesting. So if we look to the far left, there's a 0 fail. That is when a student can also be called a non-participating enrolment, or sometimes a ghost student of that terminology. It's when a student's enrolled and doesn't submit any assessment items, even though they're enrolled past census. And what we found really interesting was when we built these minimum expectations into subjects, we almost halved the number of students receiving a 0 fail grade. So the students who, for whatever reason, may not have submitted an assessment item, I think by having the content really available and accessible, clear instructions, we halved that number of students. They were more likely to submit assessments. We also dramatically reduced the number of failing grades with students. Students didn't just scrape through with a pass. They did really well. We saw a higher number of credits, distinctions, and almost triple the number of higher distinctions. So in conclusion, we should aim for consistency in experience students receive across their enrolment. By incorporating principles of universal design of learning, all students benefit from experience, but developing minimum expectations with templates and exemplars can help to guide academics towards best practice. Now, I think I still have a moment left, so I'm just going to share a tiny bit of additional data. So this year I have been awarded—
Oh, 5 minutes.
Oh, 5 minutes, thanks, Jane. This year I have been awarded a 2025 ACSES Equity Fellowship to study how universities can better support part-time students. And when I submitted these slides, 703 students have completed the survey, but it's actually much closer to 1,000 students now. It's 900, so we're getting close. And we asked students how important each of the following are in the design of your subjects, units, or courses. And presented here are the percent of students who were selected, very important. And of all the options that we gave students, the highest rated was well spaced out assessments. That's come through clearly as what's very, very important to part-time students, but I'm sure it's important to all students. Number 2 is flexible assessment due dates and automatic extensions. Mentioned that Charles Sturt has recently introduced an automatic 7-day extension. I think a number of universities have recently introduced some form of automatic extension from 2, 3, 5, 7 up to 14 days at UNE. And I think there's a real value in these for students, and clearly they appreciate them. Consistent subject unit site layout is also very important, and learning content being available early. Now, there are a few more listed on this screen here of what students value, but in descending order. So clear distinction between key and additional content, pre-recorded lectures, a variety of ways to interact with learning content, weekly announcement, university support. I was really surprised that different assessment types and early assessment items due before census were so low on the list. It would be really great to unpack why different assessment types is so low, and it may be because students haven't experienced what different assessment types really can be who have completed the survey. And I've spent most of the last 9 years working on early assessment items for identifying students at risk, and to see that place last on the list was pretty funny to me. But I think students clearly value it less, but I still think it's obviously very important for identifying disengaged students. Now, I'd like to thank my collaborators, Dr. Noelia Roman and Dr. Sarah Teagle, for the help on this project. And that's actually finished a little bit early. Apologies there.
That's great. Thank you so much, Kelly. We've actually got, I think, 5 questions on the Slido. So I'll read them out. Let's see. We might go with the first question that came through were, if we were to emulate your example for pathway programs, such as English for University or Foundation Studies, what would you recommend we look into further?
Great question. And I guess it also depends where the subject's at. So the units are at. The subjects that we were working on essentially didn't have any components of the minimum expectations in them. So it's much easier to get a really great improvement in success and student satisfaction if you're going from quite a low starting point and working up. I do think having consistency across the student's experience is really, really important. So if you've got each of the units that you just mentioned developed by different people, it might be good to take a whole of student experience look to see if things are very varied. Yeah, it's a really difficult one to answer, but I'm also very happy to share our minimum expectations that you could then edit to be suitable for your course as well, if you're interested. I think what we've started doing now is working with individual schools at our university to sort of edit them so that the academics feel a level of ownership, but they're also really quite specific for the courses that they're teaching. Yes, sorry, difficult question to answer.
We might go to the one that's got 2 thumbs up next, which is, how does the auto extension for all students differ from other forms of extension adjustments given to students with equitable learning plans?
So as part of my research into part-time students, I've now had almost 1,000 students complete the survey, and I've interviewed 70 part-time students from across Australia. And many of those students have equitable plans. So I've learned so much. So at Charles Sturt, if a student has an equitable plan, they have to apply for a formal extension, but their evidence is their equitable plan. So they're still negotiating with the subject coordinator whether they get it or not, and for the duration. And it's quite a stressful experience for students. I've heard at other universities, or I'm now aware that many other universities, if a student has an equitable plan, they are given an automatic extension. And that to me seems incredibly fair. But the students on equitable plans at Charles Sturt, the thing that they've said that they really like about the automatic 7-day extension is not having to disclose their paperwork to their subject coordinator. Sometimes they don't want to. And so the automatic extension evens that out, I guess, so that they can apply for the automatic extension. They're not going to feel that judgment, and they're not having to negotiate an extension. They can still, of course, apply for any extensions with the next full plan.
Thank you. Okay, we might go to the question that's at the top of the screen right now, which is, what advice can you provide to gain the support of senior leadership to make changes in other institutions? What's the first step? I think we'd all like the silver bullet here. What can we do?
Yeah, so I was so fortunate with this project that my role as Sub-Dean Student Retention, I was actually reporting to the DVCA. And so I proposed the project to him, and he was fairly accommodating. It would be, I guess, if you can, I think senior leaders love evidence. And if you can present some evidence, maybe pilot it across a couple of subjects at your university and present that evidence, because changing the progress rate by 27%, that I don't like to think about students with, I care about student success, not so much income for the university, but you can flip that. It pays for itself.
I think that's a very compelling argument for many of our senior leaders, isn't it? The retention rates. We might do one more very quick question before we break for morning tea. What is the embedded tutor and how students were supported through this? I think that would be a really great thing to find out more about.
Yeah, I've given a presentation on that. We have fully evaluated the embedded tutor program. So there's a couple of journal articles by Sarah Teakle and myself. But students, so we've placed embedded tutors in 50 large first-year units across the university. And the embedded tutors are employed as, they're often sessional academics, but they have discipline-specific knowledge, and they attend meetings with the subject coordinator, so they understand the marking of how the assessments will be in that subject. And then they're available through an online booking system, just like a doctor's appointment, for students to meet with the embedded tutor for half an hour, one-on-one in the lead up to an assessment item. And the embedded tutor spends 10 minutes reading a draft of the student's assignment, and then gives them specific feedback on how they can improve their work. And if a student meets with a tutor, their average mark is 10% higher than if they don't. And we see an improvement in student retention into the second year if students meet with an embedded tutor. And so again, we've done some sort of back of the envelope calculations, and that program pays for itself. And yeah, students just absolutely love it. And actually our embedded tutors really love the work as well, because they can see that they're directly supporting students.
Okay, thank you so much, Kelly. That was really interesting, and I love that idea of the embedded tutors.